everybody and tell you not to come, but I just didn't want people out on those nasty roads. I'd rather keep people as safe as possible. So that's why we canceled it and we put it on for now. Of course, the next one is 2 weeks. We were hoping to make the announcement tonight of we might be changing locations because we'd like to get a little bit bigger crowds, obviously. And as we can tell, this place gets a little bit tight and we're still missing a couple. But anyway, we're going to put out a email here in just a couple days. The next one, we did bring out, did you give them these yet? Okay, before you go home, that shows what we're going to talk about for the rest of the year. So the next one is the dangers ahead. And so we're going to talk about all the things that could go wrong inside the economy within the next year to year and a half. Most likely some of them will go wrong, and just how bad each of those scenarios could turn out to be and how to protect ourselves and kind of know that it's coming right before it happens so that we can protect ourselves even better. At that one, we'll make the announcement now, and then we'll do it again here in the new video and in the email. That one we're actually going to give away 1 ounce of silver. It's a nice silver coin. So everybody show up. Tonight we're giving away a couple books. And then the one after that is going to be about gold and silver, and at that one we'll actually be giving away a small gold nugget. So if you really want to make friends with somebody, get them to come to one of the next couple of meetings and presentations that we do here. So let's get started. That's enough of my just flapping my jaws. We were going to talk, and we are going to talk about U.S. Treasuries, especially T-bills and T-notes, mostly the T-bills, because I teased you a little bit last time. Said, how do you take just $100 and make 1.5% on your money, and you never have to tie your money up for more than a month or two? And that's the T-bill. So we're going to get into that. But something else came up since the last time I talked to you guys. It's really, really important that I think everybody needs to know, and please pass this around and tell your people to go watch us on Facebook or YouTube, because this is really important. They changed the IRA rules. They passed a new law, and it passed on December 20th of 2019, and this is why the information only came out a couple weeks ago before they finally told us that they were actually doing this. They had worked on it for months and months and months, but it got stuck in the committees and they couldn't get it to go. But at the end of the year, they always pass a law that puts back into effect a bunch of different tax cuts that were supposed to expire. Well, they snuck it in, and it actually snuck through, and so like I said, it got signed into law December 20th. And what it does, it's got some pretty nifty features to it. This is one of those laws. How often do you hear me say, oh, they passed the law and it's actually pretty good for us? Yeah, that doesn't happen too often, does it? This one actually is for most of us. So it used to be when you turned 70 and a half, you had to take what are called required minimum distributions, your RMDs. And also at that point in time, once you were taking money out of your IRA, you can no longer put more money back into your IRA. Well, they've changed both of those things. They've decided, wisdom, they're so smart. They decided that we're living longer now.
Duh.
You guys get that? And so they decided that we can now start taking money out at age 72 instead of 70 and a half. But they didn't, they sort of grandfathered it in a backward sort of way. What they did is if you turn 70 and a half after December 31st of 2019, you get to start taking your money out at 72. If you turn 70 and a half before December 31st, you still have to play by the old rules and take your distributions out. Now what they have not told us is if they're going to change the amount you have to take out. So there was a certain amount at 72. They have what's called a divisor schedule. And so you would take your balance from December 31st of the previous year and divide it by a particular number. And so at 70 and a half, it worked out to be about 3.6% of your money you had to take out. By 72, you were at about 4.4, right about there. So we don't know if it's still going to come in at the 4.4, if they're also going to adjust that a little bit. They haven't said. We keep watching and looking. We don't know yet. But anyway, the good news is we don't have to take money out until we're 72 if we don't want to. Now, of course, that means, as always, that you can you can take your money out anytime after 59 and a half, but you have to take it out once you're 72 now, okay? So the other neat thing about it is there's lots of people, shoot, I just, see, you did that, they're gonna be wondering why I'm standing up here laughing. Okay, so, okay, so I just had a guy in today, and he still works for King Supers, and he's 80 years old. No, and but what they did is they made it so we could still put money into our IRAs if you're still working past 72. Now you might be thinking, well, why would I be putting money in when I have to take money out? But you can still come out ahead. Like I said, if you're only taking 4% out, so let's say you have $100,000 in your IRA. You take 4% out, you got to take out $4,000. But once you're over 55, 60, you can put $7,000 into your IRA. So why wouldn't you put it back in? So then you might say to me, well, why don't I just put in the $3,000 difference? No, no, no. The whole point is we don't want to pay taxes on the money that came out of the IRA in the first place. So if we took our 4 out, we put 7 back in, we have to count 4 as income, but we get to take 7 as a deduction. So it just basically made this IRA withdrawal tax-free, and we got to put more away. So if you're looking at these kinds of situations, or you know somebody who is, these are the kinds of things that they should be calling me about and say, hey Ron, put the pencil to this and give me the answer. How should I do this that'll work best for me? Okay, so the other neat thing about this law is that part-time people can now participate in 401ks. Full-time is 2,080 hours a year, is considered full-time. They're saying at least 1,000 hours, so it's basically half-time. But it's still nice because there's a lot of people who may have retired from their first job and now they're only working part-time, they want to work part-time. Or there's some people who, like moms who raise kids, and then after the kids are grown, they want to go to work, but they don't want to work full-time, so they may go part-time. And so I think it's really good that they finally opened this up so that part-time people can participate inside the 401ks. It's going to help a lot. So those are the good parts. Now there's going to be what some are crying to just be such a terribly, terribly bad part. The Wall Street's just saying, oh no, this is the worst thing Congress has ever done to us. Because they took away our stretch IRAs. There are no more stretch IRA. What was a stretch IRA? You stretch your money, right? Basically you do. Stretch IRA meant that after you died, your beneficiary, it became a beneficiary IRA. It's not their IRA, it's a beneficiary IRA, and they could take money out over their life expectancy, so they could stretch out all those years. And it can even go one more generation after that. Well, the IRS says enough of that. We're not doing this anymore. We'll give you these other things, but we want to collect our tax money. But they made it pretty good. You still have 10 years to get that money out. And this is where I say, Wall Street and those boys, they're just trying to, they hate losing control of money. They'd much rather have that money so they can keep churning it and making their commissions and their dollars off of it. And that's why they wanted that money to stay intact and not part of it go off to the government. But in reality, the vast majority of people, when they inherit an IRA, guess how long they keep that IRA before it's cashed out?
A year.
Yeah, a year or two, maybe in some cases it's a few months. It's not 10 years, it's not 15 years, it's not 20 years, they're going to another generation. The only people who do that are the ones who have a couple $1 million inside their IRAs. That's a very small percentage of the population. So they can cry all they want as far as I'm concerned, because they did a whole lot more favors for the vast majority of people than they hurt the few, small percentage down here. So that's the IRA rules. Like last time, if you have questions, please write down your questions, ask me when we get more towards the end. And be glad to answer them for you, but we want to make sure we cover stuff. We're not going to get all the way through all the U.S. Treasuries tonight, or we probably won't. I have the information, and if you guys run out of questions and stuff, we'll get there. But we're definitely going to do the first part about the T-bills. So, as I said, this is the February 3rd meeting, right? We're close. It's only 14 days later. We're going to talk about how you can take as low as $100, only tie your money up for 60 days or even less and earn the equivalent of 1.5% on your money, totally guaranteed by the government. So you may have seen the ads on television, on Facebook, on wherever. And they're going, we pay 10 times the national average. How many people have seen one of those ads on television? Do you guys not watch television? 3 or 4 hands went up. Okay. So they keep going, yeah, you can make 10 times the national average. Well, whoopee. Big whoopee. National average is 0.08% on just flat savings accounts. So 10 times the national average is 0.8%. You're not even up to 1% yet. And this is what they're bragging about, that they're going to pay you 8 times the national average. They never do mention this number, by the way. I actually had to go and do the math, which was real tough. But nevertheless, they don't tell you, hardly even in the small print. So anyway, I'm talking about why are we not looking at T-bills? T-bills, an 8-week T-bill pays 1.5%. It only has to be there for 8 weeks. You could do a 4-week. The only thing about the 4 weeks is you have to have your money there. They won't cash you out within 45 days. So you could do a 4-week, but then it has to sit there an extra 15 days before they'll put it back into your account. So 8 weeks makes a little more sense. We'll get back to this here in just a second. Of course, the banks are going to tell you, oh, but we have FDIC insurance, right? That stands for Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, okay? So FDIC has in their reserves $25 billion. That's a really big number, right? Sounds pretty good. Until you stop and look at it and see that they're using $25 billion to guarantee $9 trillion. Now, I will admit, $3 trillion of it isn't guaranteed anyway, because you're only guaranteed up to $250,000 in your bank accounts, and many businesses, many people have more than $250,000 in a single bank. So there's about $3 trillion of it that isn't guaranteed, but that still leaves $6 trillion being backed by $25 billion. Now you may say, well, it's FDIC, it's safe, it's secured. How many people, I know most of you were here, but how many of you remember about 1987, the federal savings and loan crisis?
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
And was there not a thing, did they not advertise you're guaranteed your money by FSLIC? Do you remember that, FSLIC?
Yes.
Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation. Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Did FSLIC survive the savings and loan crisis?
No.
Absolutely not. It went bankrupt. The government did step in and make good on the stuff that was guaranteed. So even in a case like this, that other $3 trillion were just out. Well, why would you want to settle for that when you can actually have the government backing all of your money? All of it. And they'll let you go up to $5 million. And they're going to back it all. The one place that we know they can guarantee it because they can print it. God knows they can print it because they've been doing it for 10 years already. They're driving me nuts.
I have a question. How is this regulated differently from like an insurance company that has to have, I mean, they don't have.
Please write down and we'll do that at the end. I leave a half hour for questions.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So that we don't get too sidetracked. Okay. So T-bills. One of our little magic pills. Now, I will say, they must have known I was going to do this seminar. You got a handout that looks like this. A month ago, these weren't the rates everybody was paying on money markets. Now, these are online rates only, but they're paying right at 1.8, 1.7%. So for Citibank and Marcus is Goldman Sachs, by the way, in case you didn't know that, Capital One, those guys. So now all of a sudden money markets are coming up and they're paying about what T-bills are paying. On the other hand, I'm going to show you here in a minute, we're going to get to the others, and you'll see the T-bills are paying about the same. One of the big differences is these guys will tell you in the small print, so always read the small print, that the rates are not guaranteed. They can change even before your money gets to them, and it can change anytime after the money gets to them. There's absolutely, positively no guarantee of the interest rate, not even for one day. Whereas when we buy a T-bill, it's guaranteed for whatever length of time that we bought it for. So, the minimum is $100, maximum is $5 million. Nobody's going to jump at that $5 million.
No.
Okay. You can buy them for either 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 13 weeks, 26 weeks, or 52 weeks. So this all covers a year. Anything that's going to go above this changes from a T-bill to a T-note. Okay? So the T-bills are all the shorter ones. What they do is it runs on what's called an auction. And so how an auction works is the government says, okay, we need to sell this much in T-bills, and so then you have what's called a competitive and a non-competitive auction. So the competitive, that's where your big banks will come in and say, okay, we'll buy it from you, but we want this interest rate. The non-competitive happens, the government looks at the highest interest rate, the lowest interest rate, comes up at the moderate interest rate, and that's what the non-competitive gets, okay? So that's kind of how the auction works. But it gets better than that. Here in just a second, I'll come back to this. So the auctions, the 4 and 8 week, they happen on Thursdays, and then they fulfill those orders on the following Tuesday. So it's every week this happens. They'll do so many in 4 weeks and so many in 8 weeks every week. Your 13 and 26 week ones, they happen on Mondays, and then they fulfill the contracts on Thursdays. So what I mean is, and I bought some of these last month just to make sure it all works the way it's supposed to work for you guys. And so you tell them, you know, like on Wednesday, because the auction's on Thursday. You go, okay, I want to put in $1,000. And so then your order goes in. And then on Thursday, they actually hold the auction, and they will tell you what the rate is. And then on the following Tuesday, they actually take the money right out of your account, you know, the money that you told them they can have, and they go ahead and they buy your T-bills for you. And then it sits there until it matures, and then it comes back and they put it right back into your account. We'll get into all that here in just a second. So that's how these work. Now the 52 week one, that one they only do once a month, okay? So coming back to the auctions, the competitive and non-competitive, so what you want to do, you can't compete with the big banks. Don't even try. Don't try to outguess it. You just take the non-competitive. But the nice thing about it is they fill the non-competitives first. So that's the first thing that gets filled. So if you look at, you got these 2 pieces of paper, right? Take either one of them at the moment. Let's take the 56-day one, okay? It's the one with the yellow highlighter on it. Okay, so as you can see, the high rate at this particular auction, this was just February 13th. This was last Thursday. So the high rate was 1.565. Your median rate was 1.54, and your low rate was 1.5. So what happens is the non-competitives all get that 1.54 rate, is the rate that you're going to get. Now, the other thing I want you to notice as you're looking on here is how they actually pay the interest. So let's say you're only doing $100. You'll also see on here, it says the price. Do you see that where it says price? It says 99.756. So that's how you buy a T-bill. They're actually only going to take $99.75 out of your account, and when they pay it back, they pay you back the $100. Okay, so rather than take 100 and then pay you 1.54, they do it just the opposite. They charge you the 1.54 less, and then make you whole at the end. Okay, so the one caveat to this whole thing, and the reason why 4 weeks doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you know you're going to want that money back fairly quickly, is that you do not have compounding interest in this case, which you would in a normal bank. So that is the one caveat to it. But when you look at the interest rates here, and you look at the 13 and 26 week, then I actually like these better than what's being offered at most of the banks. For one, because it is guaranteed, whereas the other ones, how many times have we seen a bank or whoever and say, oh, we're going to give you this. And they give it to you for the first 3 months, and then after that, they cut it in half, you know, or even worse, you know, now you got to move your money again. So the cash out, like I said, you cannot cash out within 45 days, but you can have these reinvested. So like when I bought mine, I told them to renew this one 4 or 5 times. I think I said 5, because that way in 6 months it comes back out, and I'll let them pay it back out to me right into my checking account, and then I'll buy a new one. And the 8 week one, I did that for 2 more times. So when it comes due, it'll just automatically renew and buy the next one at the next rate, whatever it is. Now I don't know what the rate's going to be. It's not going to be the same. Whatever that auction is on that particular week, that's what I'm going to get again. So what really frosted me was, like all the rest of you, I have to pay a crap load in taxes. And so like in December, I had like $9,000 sitting in my tax account that I knew I had to send to the government, and that was in the money market account. TD, no, that was with the bank. And I made 9 cents. $9,000 in a month. I would have made over $11 if I had just thrown it into even the 4 week. You know, so I've gotten a whole lot smarter. I'm going to use these guys a whole lot more than I used to. So for short periods of time, but also for money that is just sitting around. You know, if you got money that's sitting around making less than 1%, and you're not going to need it within the next couple of months, put it to work. Let your money work for you, okay? The other nice thing about T-bills that you have to remember, and why, you know, okay, I'm going, shall I do 1.7 or shall I do 1.55? You know, it's not a huge difference. That one is guaranteed, this one isn't. So that's one strike in favor of these. But the other one is there's no state income tax on U.S. Treasuries. There is on regular interest rates from a bank, but because it's U.S. Treasuries, just like the old EE bonds or whatever, there is no state income tax. So you basically save another 5%. You know, you would have paid 5% taxes on that 4.67 to be exact. So the other neat thing about it is you can tell them if you want, two things. One, you can tell them to withhold taxes if you want. So if you have a lot of money invested with them and getting up there the amount that they're earning, you can actually tell them, when you pay me back, withhold this much of my earnings for taxes, 10 or 20% if you want. So that's kind of nice. Most of the banks won't do that for you. And the other thing is, let's say, like I said, I had this one renewing 2 times. So I've been in 3 times. I can change my mind. 4 days before it cashes out, I could change my mind and say, no, I don't want it to renew. Just go ahead and throw it back into my checking account. They'll do that. Just the opposite. Come after it's renewed 2 times and it's ready to pay out, 4 days before it pays out, I can actually go in on my account and say, no, I want to go another 2 or 3 times. Just let it run. And you can tell them that and they'll do that too. Now, I wouldn't do that because of the compounding interest effect. In my case, I would not do that. I'll take it out after the 6. I'll kick it into 13 or 26 instead, unless it happens to be my tax account. So, it's real easy to do. Real easy to do. You go to treasurydirect.gov. Do not do US, do not do .com. It's treasurydirect.gov. It's a really nice little website. Up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see where it says log in or sign up. It literally will take you less than 10 minutes to set up your account with Treasury Direct. I did it, I timed it, and it took like 8 minutes, and my account was set up. And that was setting up with the bank account and the whole ball of wax. And then you could go in and participate in the auctions. And so once you have your account set up, now it's going to be on the bottom left-hand corner. It says, you know, I want to buy. And so you go, and it gives you all your options. Do you want to buy a 4-week, an 8-week? What are you after? It tells you and then asks you how much money you want to invest or do it with. And that took less than another 10 minutes. So all in all, I had my entire account set up. Everything was ready to go. The bids were already made, and all of that. It was all done in under 20 minutes. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I have spent over 45 minutes in a bank just trying to do a stupid 1-year CD. You know, and this much paperwork, right? And so, I love it. It's so quick and so simple. Now, you can buy these also through a bank or a brokerage firm. However, the problem with them, the bank and brokerage firms, they want $1,000 increments and nothing in between. Whereas with with Treasury Direct, you can do $100 increments, and I like that better. And I've been trying to figure out, why do the brokerage firms do this? Well, they have to give you the same interest rate as the government gave you, and so how are they going to make the money? Well, if you have $1,700 in your account, but you can only do it in $1,000 increments, that means there's an extra $700 that's going to float in your account, earning you 9 cents, if you're lucky. Hardly anything, so they're going to earn money there, and they get to take that money and they get to buy, because they have lots of people. 200 from you, and 700 from you, and 800 from you, and 900 from you, and all of a sudden they have thousands of dollars. They're going to pay you 0.08%, 0.08% on your money, while they're earning 1.5 on it. So they do it in $1,000 increments. Other than that, it is perfectly safe. They can't mess with you on this one. It surpasses the $250,000 guarantee and all that stuff because it's U.S. Treasury direct. The government can print the money anytime they want to print the money. So, one thing I do want to get to okay, so once we get past those, oh, this is the other thing I wanted to show you. This is going to become really important. I didn't print up a 2-year, but once we get past the 1 year, then we go into the notes. And everything else works the same with the Treasury notes instead, except for it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And they pay interest every 6 months instead now. So it's not like you buy a discount and get made whole. You buy at the $100 and then they pay you interest every 6 months. And that's how notes work. But once again, the minimum is $100, whereas with brokerage firms it's $1,000. But a lot of you have probably heard, especially here recently, last August it happened again, and it's kind of the forewarner of things to come. And they call it when the yield curve inverts. Have you heard that phrase at all about the inverted yield curve? That's where the 2-year Treasury note is paying more interest than the 10-year Treasury note. And so that's inverted because normally the longer you let somebody have your money, the higher the interest rate they'll pay you, right? So when all of a sudden this reverts and the 2 years paying better, we got problems. We got serious problems. And that's usually a sign that a recession is on its way. I printed these two up for you on purpose. If you look at them for just a second, once again, the yellow one had the 56-day bill, and the bluish color is 182 days. So we're talking the 13-week versus the 26-week. Look at that high rate. Which one's paying higher? The shorter one, isn't it? Okay, so that's just a small example of what's coming and what's going to happen to where the 2 is paying better than the 10, and that's a dangerous situation. Now the government kind of likes that to a certain extent at first because they're so deep into debt. They had so many 10 years and 30 years out there that were paying 3 and 4 and even 5%. That what the government does, and this is what nobody sees or realizes how it's impacting things, because the government both buys and sells. They borrow money and they lend money at the same time. And you think, well, this is kind of goofy, but what are they doing? They're buying those higher interest rate ones to get rid of them so that they don't have to pay the high interest rates, and they're financing it by selling more short-term ones, okay? So the problem comes in, all of a sudden, they're taking on all this debt, and this is what we're really going to get into next month. Well, I'm going to give it to you real briefly here. They're taking on all this debt, all this debt, all this debt. There's going to come a point where people are going to say, we don't trust that you can service this debt anymore. Right now, we are borrowing money. We have to borrow money just to pay the interest on our debt. We do not have enough cash money to pay even the interest on our debt. Okay, we're having to borrow more money. Well, if we were doing that personally, and this does happen to people, you know, they get a charge card, then they get another charge card, then all of a sudden they have to borrow money to make the payments on the charge cards. And now they're really in trouble and they need to go get a loan. And who's going to loan them money? Nobody. Or they're going to loan them money at a really high interest rate, right? So once the government gets to this point where the people go, I'm not willing to take the risk for that small amount of a return. We want a bigger return. And that starts the whole ball rolling. So now, if the government has to borrow money now to pay the interest on the debt, how much more are they going to have to borrow if all of a sudden the interest doubles? You may remember about a year ago, the feds tried to take the interest rate back up to about 2.5%, just 2.5%, and average is between 4 and 5. If you go over the last several hundred years, the average has always been between 4 and 5%. They wanted to get it back up there. Problem is they started way too late. They should have started way back in 2012 or 13, started raising the interest rates and did it a lot slower. They started raising it, went down. If you look at it, every time we've run into a recession since 1970, the way the government fought the recession was by lowering interest rates by 5%. We are now at 1.5%. If a recession starts now, where are they gonna go?
Yeah,
Where are
zero.
they gonna go? And that's next month, we're gonna get into zero and negative interest rates. So anyway, back to this. So there's other things that you'll hear about, and you'll find, take the time and go through that website, that Treasury Direct website. You can learn so much, and it's really quite interesting. You'll get lost a few times. I have, you know, because there's so much in there. You go, what was that page? How did I see that page? Where did I get to the recent auctions and stuff? And it takes you a little while, you know, to familiarize yourself with the pages. But it's definitely worth the time and pretty interesting to see, actually. Well, if you're a nerd like me, it's pretty interesting to see, maybe not to you guys. That's why you come here, you let me do all the dirty work. So anyway, you're going to see other things. Tips. Tips are Treasury, inflation, protected securities. But that's all they pay is the inflation rate. And we all know, that's coming next month too, what they're doing with the inflation rate and how badly they're lying about that. These things are earning less than 1%. Don't buy them. There's better things out there. FRNs, floating rate notes. They're a little bit better. Don't buy them. What they do is they take the highest of the last 13 week plus the spread, and the spread is itty bitty, like a couple hundredths of a percentage point. Well, if you're going to do that, why wouldn't you just buy the 13-week note in the first thing, or the 13-week bill in the first place, right? So that's why I'm not too fond of these either. And it is a 2-year commitment on this one. It's not, the other one, you're going to get the same rate, almost the exact same rate, and you're only committed for 13 weeks. Here, you're going to get the 13-week rate, but you're committed for 2 years. Doesn't make sense to me, but do it if you want to. EE bonds, they're way different now. Remember when we were young? That was a long time ago for some of us. Really long time ago for some of us. You bought a $25 savings bond for $12.50. You held on to it for, what was it, 9 years, 10 years, and you cashed it in for $25, right? It's not how they work anymore. Now you give them $100, you get a $100 bond, and they're going to pay you 1/10 of 1% is what the savings bonds. If you have the old ones that are still paying 3 and 4%, hold on to those puppies for as long as you can to that last of the 30th year, and then cash them in, because after that you won't make anything after that. I've got clients who are still getting 3, 4, 4.5% on some of those. I think I even saw one at 5. Yeah, he goes, what should I do with these? I go, are you kidding me? You hold on to that for as long as you can. Okay, I-bonds. Now I-bonds I do like these, except for not currently, but I like them all in all. I like the concept of an I-bond. An I-bond pays 2 interest rates. It pays your base interest rate, plus it pays a variable interest rate, and this is more like the inflation protected, except for it works better than the inflation protected one. And so the base rate, whatever you buy it at, that's what it's going to stick with. So people who bought these 10 years ago and got a base rate of 3%, they're still making 3+%. A lot of times it's around 3.4, 3.6.